Welcome to this video, second round action for the candidates in County Manzisk. And the game I'm going to look at in this video is Aronian against Mamedyarov. Aronian with a terrible start, losing the first round with black against Arnand, and it really wasn't a good game. It rarely happens that you can be satisfied with a loss, but I guess he was, he simply had an off day and wasn't really, in this game. So Aronian in really desperate need to get a win in this tournament. Not like desperate, it's maybe too strong a word, but he's certainly in some kind of Zugzwang to show something. Mamedyarov had a draw in the first round, so he can be quite satisfied with the start. I guess he had some chances against Topalov maybe, but still not a bad start. So let's see what happened in the game. Aronian going for d4, his main opening move, and Mamedyarov is a versatile player, but here he goes for the Ragozin defense in the Queen's Gambit. He has played that before, but also Aronian is an expert on that line with both colors, so they both should know quite some things about this. The Ragozin is one of the more active defenses in the Queen's Gambit compared to the classical variation with Bishop e7. The flavor of this line, the Ragozin, is much more like the Nimzo-Indian in many lines. It sort of combines the Queen's Gambit and the Nimzo. Of course, black is committed to an early d5 here. It's the Queen's Gambit after all. So transpositions to the Nimzo are somewhat limited to lines where black has played d5, obviously. But we can have direct transpositions in some cases if Aronian here, for example, would go e3. Let's say castles, bishop d3, c5, and we're in an absolute mainline Rubinstein Nimzo. It's possible, but okay, the main move here is bishop g5, besides taking, which can easily transpose. But he played bishop g5 here, and Mamedyarov played knight bd7. Here black can also play other moves. He can play h6, interesting alternative, or he can play the capture, which is very, very sharp. But knight d7 is nowadays probably the most popular move. Yeah, now Aronian exchanged on d5 and played knight d2. This is an interesting idea. I know that Aronian has played this before. I found examples for that, but I never really considered this line and had a study of it. But now that I looked at this game, it feels like an interesting way for white to play. A positive feature of this line is obviously that the knight on d2 helps to break this pin on the knight on c3, and this means that white now actually threatens to just take d5. Black cannot play a move like, let's say, castles and ignore everything, because white will just take on d5 and wins a pawn for absolutely nothing. So black needs to react to the threat on d5. This also applies in case of the move c5, which otherwise would be black's normal next move. Like, let's say e3, black will play c5. And here, after knight d2, this is simply not possible, as again knight d5 is on. So black basically has to do something about this simple threat. And there are two moves, bishop e7, moving it again. Not terrible. I mean, the bishop on b4 is maybe, after having provoked knight d2, not so excellently placed on b4. So bishop e7 is not bad. Or you can play, as Mamedyarov did, c6. This is actually related, as the bishop quite often returns anyway, but I think he wants to keep his options open. Maybe put it just on d6 if the circumstances are right for that. So c6 covering on d5, e3, and knight f8. What we now have is a somewhat strange yeah, or let's say it's a typical pawn structure for the Queen's Gambit exchange, the oftentimes called Carlsbad structure, which means that C and E pawn have been exchanged and white has this typical pawn center, d4, e3 against d5, c6, those pawns. This is typically called the Carlsbad structure, from this famous city where lots of tournaments have been played. In case I think we are speaking about tournaments in the 1920s and somewhat earlier of the 20th century. Yeah, the weird thing is we have this typical pawn structure, but the piece placement is somewhat different. The bishop is on b4 instead of e7, and the knight is on d2. So these, for instance, this doesn't make much sense, but just to show what I'm talking about, if white would now drop this back and black would drop this back, we would have a completely normal position in the Queen's Gambit exchange. Of course, white is not moving the knight again, but it's just this structure with a twist. Knight f8 is interesting. It quickly intends to regroup the knight, free up this bishop for potential development, and also allow two things. The knight might go here and then play h6 to win the bishop pair. We see that in the game, this idea. Or the other idea is black can also go here. This is also a classical regrouping in the structure. Knight e6 and then g6, knight g7, bishop f5. This is typically associated with another player from that era, the 1920s and 30s. It's Stahlberg, to pronounce it with the German flavor. Stahlberg. I think he was Swedish, if I'm not mistaken. No. Okay, this is another plan, but okay. Bishop d3 was played to prevent bishop f5. Yeah, and black went with knight to g6. The mentioned plan is like that. This was also a possibility. Knight e6, bishop h4, and then g6. For instance, let's say something like that is what black can try to do. Go here and then bishop f5. This is the plan that I described. The general idea, at least. I'm not sure that you can execute it in this particular way, but this is the general idea. For example, if you look at this here, castles, knight g7, white I think has this funny shot. Quite nice, because of this pin here. After cd there's queen a4 check. Yeah, okay, but he went knight g6 anyway, which opts for another plan. Yeah, f4. This is very ambitious. White probably intends to put the knight back to f3 and to e5. This makes some sense out of the knight d2 move in this particular structure. And it might intend to play f5, gaining even more space. And we quickly get to a very concrete position. Mamedyarov plays h6. And we had this capture on f6. White has no place anywhere for the bishop. Yeah, and here Aronian played the move f5. And now let's have a look at the clocks. We are on 1 hour 43. I believe in this case the clock times are quite near what actually was happening in the game. There's always a slight delay. It's not 100% precise, but we're close to that. And here Mamedyarov played the move knight e7 after 4 minutes thought. In fact, this position is already highly critical, because black must consider what to do now with the knight. It's obviously critical. You have many squares. You have h8, which looks entirely ridiculous. You have h4, which also looks a bit strange, because consider this move. Where is the knight exactly going? It does not really have a square. If white goes queen h5, you're facing this threat. And what should black do? We'll probably get a position like that. Bishop takes, Rook takes. Yeah, note that take with the bishop. There is the funny move g6, which is perfectly okay for black. Very weird tactic. But rook f5, knight f5, queen f5, queen f5, bishop f5. And this is an interesting position to consider. It arises almost by force after this knight h4 move. Look at this position. White has got two pieces, two knights actually, against rook and pawn. And the computer, in this case Houdini 4, assesses the position as completely equal. But this surprised me. I mean, I think that most human players would definitely prefer to be white here by some extent or another. Not sure how much, but if you just give people a choice, what would you rather be in this position? I think they mostly would take white, because it feels like it's relatively close. Black has seven pawns, but these are also 7 pawns that can be attacked by the minor pieces, while the rooks are not so, not actually roaming on the board. It's I think a position that initially black would rather not play. Okay, you do it if you don't have a great choice, if the alternatives are clearly worse, but it's not terribly attractive. And yeah, what other move is there? Yeah, black in fact has an interesting tactical move. He has the move queen to g5. And it turns out that this would have been rather okay for black. Queen g5. What's the idea? Of course, if white takes, you grab here and get your bishop back, with black enjoying a pawn and an excellent position. So this is not on. White needs to protect the pawn. And this is possible with various queen moves. In fact, you could analyze this much deeper, but I'll just given a sample line. White plays queen f3, then knight h4, actually wins a tempo, and then maybe queen g3. And here, for instance, it's not mandatory move like bishop e7. It's not doing much on b4 anyway, and here it lends support to the knight. And this is an entirely unclear position. I'm really not sure how to assess it. Yeah, let's say rook a1. It's many moves possible, and black now can play even g6, attacking this square, this pawn, and this seems perfectly acceptable for black, despite this somewhat strange-looking knight. It's probably about equal. White can also play other moves with the queen to cover. Queen e2, for example. Then also knight h4 is coming. And now, yeah, black is attacking this 3 times. And white needs to react somehow. And not sure what he should do. A move like knight f3, yeah, black gets rid of this somewhat, yeah, offside knight. This liability is now taken away. And black should be perfectly okay. So black actually had a good alternative here to knight e7, which looks perfectly natural, I admit. And this is what Mamedyarov played, knight to e7. Alright, so now in this video I'll give you a small puzzle to solve. Exactly this position, I know it looks entirely harmless, like right out of an opening book. We are on move 14 now for white. But if you want, treat it as a puzzle. I'll be silent for a couple of seconds so that you can easily pause the video and then look for yourself. It's really like that, white to play and win. Yeah, amazingly enough, white actually now can, yeah, I guess win the game almost. It's fair to say. I mean, it's not completely trivial, but very close. White wins the game with the move that Aronian played after 10 minutes of thought, knight d to e4. Quite amazingly, this knight jumps to e4, where it can be taken. So what's the idea? Black takes it, and he took it quickly. He by now had realized probably what he had done. Knight takes, and now we see the big problem. Look at the queen. Cannot go to e7 these squares are also guarded by white pieces, so there only is one square left, queen to h4. Yeah, and now Aronian played g3. It's very important to not play rook f4 here, which was my initial thought. Okay, well, trap the queen, that's nice. But black actually can continue the game. He can take on f4 and play knight f5. I mean, in the game continuation, he can also continue. But this feels much more difficult in comparison to the game, because this is simply weak for white. If you look at the game, he played g3, attacking the queen. It only has one square on h3. And then knight f2 was played. And now the queen is trapped. It has no square. And it needs to get as much material as possible. So
Check.
Takes on f1. Just taking the rook, and white recaptured. And if you compare this to the other position, where white had this, we can also play this move out. In the other position, white actually had pawn on f4 and an isolated pawn on d4. And here he has a perfectly healthy pawn structure in the center. It's not perfectly healthy, is a bit much, because e3 is somewhat weak, but that's not a serious issue. Yeah, so what do we have here? White has got 6 pawns, black has got 6 pawns. Pawn count is equal, but white has the queen for a bishop and a rook. And as there are no particular features that favor black, white should win the game. In addition, he also has, look at the next move, you can play that on the board. We see that white actually has his forces in play. The rook here is the only piece that is not playing quickly, but it can join the action on some central square. e1, okay, need to be careful. But the rook is ready to join while black is still on the back ranks. And white has a center, in fact, so black is not dominating with pieces in the center to compensate. Basically now the game enters an almost technical task. And after knight d6, Aronian takes the center, and now step by step manages to improve all pieces. And this is the right strategy here. Not allow anything specific by black. Don't expose your own king, for example, as white, and just try to slowly advance. And I think he's playing this nicely. Knight on d3 to improve it. Maybe on c5 later, on f4. King f1 was necessary. There was knight f2 threatened, so he steps out of any inconveniences. And here the knight arrives on f4. Yeah, and it's not so easy for black not to take it. What else is there if you don't take it? Let's say you return. There's even this move, e5. What's the point if black takes? White enters with a direct win on h7. Yeah, it's very ugly. Black must take it, and he did so. And now white recaptured with a pawn. Yeah, this completes a great center for white. And it also is the foundation for white's next mini plan. You play this position with little plans that actually accumulate the advantages to improve the position further and further. And this pawn mass in the center now is the base for advancing the pawns here. Queen c3 to cover d4. Slowly improving, and now after some further expansion on the queen side, white pushes in the center with e5. He didn't even need to include the rook yet in the game. It's not necessary yet. The pawn just advanced forward. And black is trying to hold on, but it's not really possible to defend. Note that Aronian is taking time. He's not blitzing this, and this is very important. He's completely aware that he needs to win this now, and of course it's a winning position. But if for whatever reason he's not winning this, the tournament for him is basically over. I mean, psychologically this would be devastating. So it's you should really make sure to absolutely kill off all counterplay and win this clearly. And okay, he's got a couple of minutes left. There's no reason to rush things. White has everything under control. Yeah, further advancing. Now he lets the rook enter the game on the g file. That's very nice and logical. On h6 the pawn is hanging, so black reacts. And here, this position, move 37. Yeah, here Aronian could have won the game even quicker than he did. I'm spoiling this, right? But it's not a big spoiler. You probably expect him to win now. He could have won somewhat quicker with the sacrifice on g7 here. Takes and queen h5. And it turns out that this threat is so enormously strong that black has no defense against the upcoming attack. For example, if we look at this, let's say rook to f8 to cover a bit.
Check. Check.
Yeah.
Check.
Give a couple of checks if you want, and at the end you take and play e7. You could say that okay, this looks rather cooperative to put the rook on f8 in this fork, but what exactly should black play? It's really tricky. If you can look at this, for example.
Check.
But this is a mate.
Checkmate.
Yeah, this is also a mate. So rook g7 was winning, but it's not really necessary. He's got 12 minutes on the clock. He probably calculated some lines and then decided, okay, I've got to make 3 more moves or 4 more moves to get to the time control. And yeah, I'm winning this technically, so why do anything like that? He just improved the pieces a bit further. Queen a3, covering important squares and having e7 in mind, so like capture and e7 at some stage. Bishop c4, rook g4. He just wants to make the time control and limit every counterplay imaginable to nothing. Yeah, black just waits and he just wants to make move 40. Very pragmatic decision. And now that move 40 is reached, he gets a couple of extra minutes, like 1 hour. Sorry, not a couple, 1 hour. You see that the clock is jumping up again. And now we see some precise moves to finish black off. Knight to f4 was tried. Rook to d1. And king h8. Yeah, and now white is finishing things off with the nice move d5. That's the game that that's the move that decides, because after the capture here, white just attacks the knight. Yeah, sending it to h3, which is kind of funny. Now here, and now bishop h5 and the e-pawn, and the h4 threat is just too much. Let's something like that, for example. Here the rook has absolutely no square, for example. Yeah, black is just completely busted. If he takes with the knight, I think he did that, right? Yes, in the game he took with the knight, and then Aronian played bishop h5. This was one idea, to get this square on h5 for the bishop. Now the rook is attacked and it has no place to go. It can go to g8, yeah, but then e7 just promotes the e-pawn or wins yet another piece. So like knight e7. And white is even a queen up for a single rook and yeah, a couple of pawns which don't really matter here. So a very, very important win for Aronian here. After, I'm not sure if I mentioned that, after bishop h5 black resigned. A very important win for Aronian, who's back in the tournament after this really puzzling loss in the first round, he immediately could strike back and win this game. Certainly with lots of help in form of this blunder by Mamedyarov. But it does not matter in this case. You need the point, and every kind of point is enough. Certainly nice to play a good game and not, let's say, be completely lost and the other guy just blunders a piece in time trouble and then you get the point. But the most important thing is to get back to 50%. So he's back in the race with 50%, and arguably it's probably psychologically even very okay for him now. I mean, we had this off day and now a win. Maybe shows him that, okay, I'm able to bounce back, even if it was mostly due to Mamedyarov's big error. For Mamedyarov, of course, this is really a bad start now. I mean, he was one of my... I've got two dark horses in this tournament where I thought, okay, maybe with a good start they can do something. One of them was Mamedyarov, and with this loss now, yeah, that's it basically in terms of having a good start and maybe do something in the tournament. It's important to not get into really bad shape now and play a good game tomorrow for him after such a blunder right in the opening, basically giving the queen away. This can turn out to be a very tough tournament, as we learned last year in the example of Ragozin, who really had a rotten form and finished last in this tournament of last year in London. All right, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back, of course, tomorrow with the next round, and also there are the other games to check out for round 2. They were all interesting, really, all of them. All right, thanks for watching.